The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining today's webinar, Mobile in the Mix, Insights from our Cross-Media Analysis of Mobile Advertising. We will be getting started in a few minutes, but first I want to go over some housekeeping items. Today's webinar is being recorded, and a video of the recording will be emailed to you. If at any time you have questions, please type them into the chat box. At this time, I would like to introduce Rex Briggs, CEO of Marketing Evolution, and our co-host, Jane Manfred, Associate Vice President of Marketing Evolution. As many of you know, Rex has been working with Fortune 500 companies to improve marketing ROI for more than 2 decades. He is a leading expert in unlocking ROI profits through measurement and is credited with pioneering many digital measurement techniques, including post-click analysis, attribution modeling, and cross-media measurement. Jane Manfred is our Associate Vice President of Software and Engineering in the role of Product Owner at Marketing Evolution and has focused her career in developing and implementing marketing effectiveness technology. She is a certified Scrum Product Owner and Agile practitioner. She leads Marketing Evolution's customer-focused platform development and implementation. With a background in media analysis, Jane has worked across industries in marketing effectiveness, strategy, and ROI. Please welcome Rex and Jane.
Thanks, Elizabeth. So just a quick check on the technology. Are you able to see my screen? Okay, then I will.
I can see it, Rex.
Okay, perfect. I will dive on in. So today we are talking about mobile marketing and its role in the media mix. And this presentation, like many of our webinars, is primarily for our clients. Of course, we invite lots of other folks to participate in this dialogue and discussion, but we just see such a huge opportunity for our marketers that we want to make sure that, that they're able to get the full return on investment. So I'm going to go ahead and take you through some of the beginning parts of the presentation and really highlight the fact that what we're seeing right now suggests that really mobile should be about 3 times more than the current spending levels. And I'll start off with a poll here just to see where everybody's at today. And go ahead and ask you to answer what your current percentage of your total marketing budget is being spent on mobile. So go ahead and vote, and we'll tally them up and see where we're at. And we'll compare it against some industry norms. Okay, I'll give the poll another 5 seconds. Okay, thank you for getting your votes in. So where we're at right now is it looks like 60% of the folks on the phone are spending less than 1% of their budget on mobile, and then a little bit in the 1 to 5% and some in the 5 to 10%, but no one really in the 15% or more, even 10% or more. And that really is pretty consistent with where the industry's at right now. If we come back to the Forrester, eMarketer analysis, they found that that in terms of advertising budgets, national advertising budgets, mobile is about 4.7% of the mix. And if you added in local and some of the other things, it would actually be even a smaller percentage than the 4%. And so what I want to help us address today is what is the right share of the mix for your brand? And how much better off will marketers be if they increase mobile to the optimal level in the mix? So interestingly, the issue for mobile isn't so much an issue around the direct response, the immediate click-through part, and that those dollars seem to be moving fine because there's a very fast feedback loop for a direct marketer on how's mobile comparing to other forms of advertising and marketing. But when it comes to how to get the fair share of the budget in the branding budget, that's where we see the struggle. And you see this quote from one of the MMA board members talking about trying to understand what marketers should be spending, and even when they have had some evidence and data, there's a fair amount of confusion in the industry, and and challenges to try to figure it out. And this is a big deal because really when you think about branding, spending, it's 42% of the digital ad spend. So this adds up to billions and billions of dollars. And the challenge, and when we say branding, you see it in quotes there, we think about branding as the recognition that you need to do more than just an immediate transactional response to a message. It could be for a category where the advertising is building new awareness, so it makes people aware of the product so they can check it out later on, or it takes a product that they're already aware of and reinforces a key brand perception that makes them a little bit more likely to select that brand versus the competitors. It could be a situation where you have a long sales cycle and you're trying to influence sales, but it's it's not a sale that's going to happen immediately the second that they see an advertisement. Then all of those we put under the category of branding because it's about creating a psychological impact and an impact that is more complicated to measure. And this is certainly a challenge for mobile, and we see that I think affecting the amount that's being spent today. If we think about this, we've seen this movie before. We saw this with digital advertising a decade ago, and we, as many of you are familiar with, did a whole series of industry studies. And this was the first dozen studies shown in this table here. We actually did somewhere around 20 of them. And what we were looking at was all kinds of different categories, from health and beauty to QSR to different versions of CPG and pharma and entertainment, financial services and technology and automotive, and so on and so forth. And what we're really recognizing in all of these cases is that these are not direct response marketers. They may have some of their budget spent in direct response, but they, for the most part, are brands that need to create an impression in the mind. And we need to understand what role digital advertising could play in changing awareness or brand image or purchase intent, or very importantly, sales, which you see in the bottom right corner. What we found was that without spending a single dollar more, marketers could increase their awareness by 8 to 34%, increase their purchase intent by 5 to 20%, and very importantly, when we connected it to actual sales, offline sales, we saw an increase of 4 to 15% increase in sales, again without spending a single dollar more. So we think about this with mobile, and we say, well, if we could help figure out whether or not the same pattern was playing out in mobile, this could be a big opportunity for our clients to be able to increase their market share and increase their sales without spending a single dollar more by figuring out how to get the mix right. If we go back a dozen years ago, we found that at 9 out of 12 studies, online was proven to be the most cost-effective medium, and it was being under-leveraged by marketers. And the companies we worked with, which are in the blue and light blue columns charts on the right, they increased their mix fairly quickly because they realized and saw with the hard data how much more their sales could be, how much more their impact on their marketing objectives could be if they optimized digital in the mix. And they got a disproportionate advantage compared to the rest of the marketplace, which also increased their share but not at the same rate because they didn't have the same evidence and the same analysis and the same process for understanding how digital fit into the mix. So we look at mobile and say, I think there's the same opportunity here. We could help our marketers, our clients, figure out what its optimal share is and increase their rate of spending at a faster rate than the competition, and they will be able to steal market share and will help them be more successful than the competitors without that data. So what's different now a dozen years forward? Well, there's certainly some things that are similar. We've talked about what's similar in the equation, but what's different is today we have new tools and better tools. Jane will take us through some software that shows how to do what-ifs based upon this massive database that Marketing Evolution has assembled of historic ROI across 9 different industries, covering billions of dollars in spending and over $100 million in real-world marketing ROI analytics run through at a campaign-by-campaign level measurement that Marketing Evolution does for our clients on a regular basis. And that software really helps do things that we couldn't do before. It helps be able to say, well, what if I had mobile in the campaign? What if I didn't? Or what if I make these other changes or target these kind of people or have this type of marketing objective? How much should I be spending in mobile? A dozen years ago, marketers were just sort of guessing, but now we can use the best historical data to get a good view of what if you had mobile in the mix? What could you expect to happen? The other thing that's different is that in many of the early campaigns, especially you go back to the Dove Nutrient one, the very first study a dozen years ago, we got the analysis of how digital contributed to the mix after the campaign was already over. And there were insights that we learned about different ad formats or images as we went through these different sequence of studies, like with McDonald's study. But we couldn't really leverage that insight until the next campaign cycle. Now we're a lot faster. We're much more about real time and in-campaign analysis. And certainly by the Ford campaign, which is one of the later campaigns in that sequence, we were delivering results 1 week into the campaign, and 2 weeks, and a month in, and so forth. And that gave feedback for how to optimize the, any insights we were getting while the campaign was still running. And so over on the right side, you see a picture of our mission control dashboard, and that ability to see what's working, what's not working, can not only help us make sure that that forecast that we projected for mobile, that we hit that forecast, but in fact we may be able to exceed the forecast because we may unlock new insights that can help mobile be more effective. So much faster learning cycle. I think what this will mean that this round for mobile is that the window of opportunity for the early movers to steal share from competitors absolutely still exists. However, I think that window might be a little bit shorter because marketers will be able to test and ask the what ifs in a much quicker cycle. And they'll be able to get the instant gratification when they do measurement with marketing evolution about what's working, what's not working. I think that instant gratification will lead to a faster shift in budgets and a greater confidence that if they put money in mobile and take it from other areas, that it will be very productive and it will make them more money, more profit than if they sit on the sidelines and just wait to see how the industry sorts itself out. So that's my perspective on what's new and different. I'd like to share some findings to date of what we've seen so far, and then I'll hand it over to Jane. So the findings to date are we've done this major meta-analysis that took all the different research studies from a lot of different research companies, not just Marketing Evolution, but several other research companies out there that have measured mobile through test and control research. Now, this does look at mobile in isolation. So these studies, don't help understand the full cross-media context, but they're pretty useful to see what is the expected impact of mobile. And we've been able to model it into our ROI database. We examined over 500 studies, and we found about a little over 100 studies that were very high enough quality of control and exposed that we could use them within our ROI database. And this is some of what Jane will present when she shows the software will be driven by some of that meta-analysis data. And you can see a copy of that meta-analysis on our website in the knowledge section. And it's at the bottom of the list, I believe. The other study that we're doing is the SMOC study with the Mobile Marketing Association, and we were very proud to be selected as the vendor of choice to do this research. They had started working with someone else who put a lower cost in front of them initially. Didn't work out so well. Called us and said, we really need your help. You guys are really the only ones who have the experience and knowledge to be able to really model this complex new media. And we've agreed that we will do a series of high-profile, in-depth campaign analysis for a variety of marketers on a global basis. And what's exciting about these studies is that these are more really in-depth case studies where we can really look at how individual components of the campaigns were working, why some things were working better than others, and we can really show these marketers engage in these studies where mobile fits in, and how to optimize as the campaign's unfolding. So I'll share with you the first study that we released at the Mobile Marketing Association conference earlier this month, and that was for AT&T. And in their case, their goal was to move awareness. They were launching a new phone, and they weren't spending a lot in mobile, but they were spending enough to be able to measure mobile's role in the mix. And as they point out, they typically spend more in mobile now, and they're big believers in mobile. But really, we need to unlock some new insights about how mobile works to help them be more effective and to figure out what the optimal role in the mix is. And so some of the research we look at are things like, well, instead of just looking at how did this spending work overall, we want to dig deeper in and say, well, why does mobile work in certain ways? And do some ad sizes work better than others? Do some creative messages work better? We could see that the larger ad worked better. We can then calculate the differential cost between those ads, and we can see whether or not the larger sizes are worth it. They are. We can also begin to come up with some hypotheses about why some creative messages might work better. One theory was that the large ad allowed the whole product to be shown, and that meant instant recognition for people, and there might be some advantages there. So you can also create a learning agenda of new things to test in future research studies. The other insight was really looking at who's responding to the advertisement. You can have a creative ad, and you can have your best guesses and pre-testing research to validate that, hey, this should work in the marketplace. But until it's actually launched in the marketplace and you can read who's really responding to it in real time, you're bound you're bound to find surprises here. And a creative will find its right audience. And if we're measuring and paying attention to that, we can help optimize the mix. In this case, we saw that males were more responsive to the message compared to the average. And therefore, if you had this insight while the campaign was running, and you have a good programmatic targeting information behind it, you could then adjust your media buy to skew more towards the males and increase the ROI of your campaign. Now, we usually will test somewhere around 1,000 different combinations of demographic and digital profiling to try to find out any insights we can to help make the effectiveness better. And in this case, you can see the clear impact from males. We also, in these case studies, put all the campaign and media together because we're measuring everything that's happening. We're measuring the television, the national magazines, the digital, mobile, anything that's in a mix. As we looked at this mix, what we saw was that TV was very effective and was continuing to be effective. It was not yet at the point of diminishing returns. Still, there was more productivity if you took a little bit of that budget away from the TV and reallocated it into national print up until it hit the point of diminishing returns over here, and very importantly for the focus of this study, into mobile, which really had a steeper ROI response up until somewhere around this point. And so we could see that if that happened, that reallocation would, without spending a single dollar more, would generate 3.7 million more people with awareness of the product just from that reallocation. And so you can see to the right, the recommendation that looks optimal here is about 15%. And in fact, that's pretty consistent with some of the research that we had looked at in the meta-analysis. So it was very great confirmation that from the meta-analysis, you can play the what-if scenarios that Jane will show you, have a pretty good ballpark of where you should be, and then you can go and measure actual campaigns and get some good validation, or you may find some other additional insights and so forth. So, I think the headlines are that mobile is underspent by most marketers. Our proven formula for shifting share is we're not trying to prove that you should spend more on mobile. We make no money off of people shifting budget to mobile. We don't have a dog in the fight. We are focused on getting the right answer for marketers, for our clients, for how to increase their return on investment. And so our orientation is to really go and try to understand how mobile does work. And it's so much more than advertising. It is a marketing vehicle. It is a customer service channel. It has broad implications, especially with the geo-targeting capabilities and the fact that people are carrying it with them everywhere they're going. It's oftentimes the first thing people look at in the morning and the last thing they look at before they go to bed. It plays a very important role. And so we want to help marketers understand the full context of how mobile can help marketing and businesses be successful. And to that end, we use our process of scenario planning and the communication optimization process, which is really about defining success up front and thinking more broadly about what do you want to learn from this, how else might you use this, what kind of learning agenda should we generate. And then, of course, we apply world-class independent analytics and our consulting management with our teams acting as trusted advisors, really as partners with the marketer to figure out, hey, does this have an opportunity to improve your return on investment? And if so, how do we take that insight and turn it into action? And that's really the last bullet point here, which is we link this up with systems to take the insights and to make the implementation of those insights into media plans, into creative rotation, and so forth really, really easy. So if you are in your organization and you're pretty interested in mobile, maybe you're more of a mobile advocate, you believe it can work, can make a big impact, but you're running up against other people in your organization that are like, well, I'm not sure that we want to change anything. I'm not sure that we want to rock the boat. We kind of like the status quo. We know that these other media that we've been using are tried and true and proven. I want to share with you a quote from Buckminster Fuller, which leads to really Jane's part of the presentation. And it's the idea that you can't change the way people think. But what you can do is you can give people tools, the use of which will change their thinking. And so I believe that if we can get people to be engaged in measuring and monitoring how things are working, that they will come to the right conclusions and insights about how to optimize their return on investment. So with that as a core concept, I want to hand it over to Jane and talk about how using the ROI database, the ROI Brain database to do what-if analysis can be a good first step. And then we'll come back and talk some more. So Jane, over to you.
All right, thanks, Rex. Can you hear me?
I sure can.
All right, great. So Marketing Evolution partners with marketers at really 3 specific points in the life cycle of a marketing campaign to consider the optimal media spend and the overall performance of mobile. And I've got those 3 points outlined here. The first one is really the fuel for those what-if scenarios that Rex is referring to. We use our impact-based planning software to do what-if scenarios to determine the optimal budget allocation across mobile media levers and ad types in context with the other media in the campaign. So where does mobile fit into the mix? How much of your total budget should go towards mobile, and how should that be distributed against the different mobile ad types and media levers? This informs media planning and buying decisions in addition to projecting the expected impact to be delivered by the specific campaign. So looking at the total campaign impact to be delivered and then specifically breaking down the goals set for mobile to deliver. So like Rex said, a lot of marketers haven't spent a lot in mobile traditionally, so really thinking up front, using these what-if scenarios to say, what do I expect that mobile will deliver against my campaign KPI or against my sales goal? This is fueled by our database of historical data like Rex referenced. Then Marketing Evolution conducts in-campaign measurement across all media, including mobile, to offer recommendations for mid-course adjustments by media types across creative executions based on that in-campaign performance. So how should you adjust your spend towards mobile and all the other media included in your campaign based on that in-market performance? Finally, Marketing Evolution will provide an analysis of the individual media contribution and the overall campaign ROI and individual media ROI upon campaign completion, which will be great data for case studies to offer comparisons that validate and demonstrate the campaign performance and ROI with and without the use of emerging media like mobile. So like Rex said, Marketing Evolution is doing these types of case studies right now in partnership with the Mobile Marketing Association. We're also doing this work with a lot of our marketer clients, and I know we have many of you on the line today. These studies are really a good opportunity to consider how marketers may be under-leveraging mobile and really to determine what the increase in marketing ROI will be and what can be achieved by finding that optimal spend point for mobile. So within Marketing Evolution's ROI Brain software platform, we have 5 specific mobile levers that are fueled by the historical database of mobile studies that we've tested and measured in the past, and they can be leveraged for these what-if scenarios and media planning and goal setting. We have levers for mobile display, ads and apps, mobile video, mobile games, and mobile social. And these levers are considered in optimizations across all media types to determine the recommended budget allocation. So I'm showing a screenshot here of our software, but I'm actually going to jump into our software environment to run an optimization scenario with these mobile levers included, and then compare that to a scenario that excludes those mobile levers to demonstrate the incremental ROI that can be achieved by including mobile in the mix. So if technology works with us here, I am in our impact-based planning software. So for the clients we have on the line, this is a very familiar environment. This environment is fueled by our historical database. So the historical impact data, in addition to our syndicated reach frequency data and cost data. So this scenario is for the retail industry for a pretty general target audience. We're going to keep this one pretty broad at 25 to 54 for the objective of purchase intent. I'm going to set the campaign budget to the $30 million threshold and choose all of my media levers. So I want to consider cable TV and cinema and digital display, magazine. All of these media levers are what I want to consider in my optimization. So these are all available to spend across this $30 million spend. And then I have my mobile specific levers that I highlighted on the previous slide. So mobile display, ads and app, video, games, and social. So I'm going to go ahead and save and run and see if we can get technology to cooperate on my internet connection. And while that runs, we'll just talk about how this optimization is considering the hundreds of media levers that I selected, so all the different TV networks and day parts and individual magazine titles, including their impact data, the syndicated reach frequency data, and cost data that I referred to. We can also add custom levers for different mobile ad types that marketers want to consider in their campaign. If we have any publishers on the line, we do have the ability to add publisher-specific mobile levers. If we want to look at specific properties within the overall media mix, so these 5 levers that are fueled by our historical data can be expanded in marketer-client situations and with publishers to really look at different mobile ad types and how they contribute to the overall media mix. So I've actually cheated a little bit and already run this in advance in case it was taking a little bit of a long time, which it seems to be, pulling all these different data sources and duplication across media. It's a lot of data to process. So in the interest of time, I'll jump right to the results here. So for this scenario, our $30 million budget in retail with the objective of purchase intent considering all of my media levers. My budget allocation includes, here's mobile right here in the red pie chart, 14% of the budget. So this is actually considerably higher than the levels of spend that the folks on the line indicated in the poll. But the optimal allocation towards mobile is at 14% for this particular scenario. And the total campaign we expect to deliver an impact across 6 million people for this specific scenario. So this is the what-if scenario for marketers that may not have used mobile in the past, can really set that goal to project what they expect mobile will deliver within this media mix. So in advance of our time today, I also ran a scenario with that $30 million budget in the retail industry for purchase intent with all of the exact same campaign parameters, except they excluded the mobile levers. So those 5 levers that I showed before were actually excluded from the scenario, so I could only optimize against those other media. And you see in the comparison of the results for the scenario with mobile compared to the scenario without mobile, it's actually 10% higher impact can be achieved with that same budget by having mobile in the mix. So essentially adding those mobile levers is increasing the ceiling for the total impact that can be achieved by those same $30 million. So this scenario is the comparison in the retail industry, like I said, for this particular campaign objective, but we can use our impact-based planning software to run scenarios across different objectives, different industries, to look in advance and say, what will mobile deliver within my mix? You can see the only difference here is that mobile is excluded in the scenario on the right and included in the scenario on the left. And running these types of scenarios help marketers arm themselves with data in advance of running that scenario if they haven't tested mobile marketing in the past. So I'm going to jump back to my presentation here. So jumping back to my deck, I've run similar scenarios in the health and beauty industry and the quick service restaurant industry in advance of our time today to look at a similar situation. So we've got one scenario, $30 million without mobile, and one scenario for $30 million with mobile. And we can see that the trend that we saw in the retail scenario I just ran actually persists throughout. So for the health and beauty situation and the quick service restaurant, we see 3% higher total campaign impact for that same budget in the scenario with those mobile levers, and a 5% higher impact for QSR in the scenario where we included those mobile levers within that $30 million budget. So essentially, having mobile in the mix is increasing that ceiling on what the total campaign can deliver.
So Jane, going back to the compare chart that you have that you had up there from your run in the software, I can see a marketer asking the question of, okay, well, this is a simulation. This is looking at my industry and my category, and maybe if you as you put in, you could put in someone's specific budget, right? Instead of you just ran it with and without mobile, but you can say this is exactly what I spent in my last campaign cycle, or I'm planning to spend the campaign cycle, and then have it with and without mobile. But I can see a marketer doing that and saying, okay, well that's interesting. I can see where I'm having to, you're recommending I take budget from and reallocate, that I'll be 10% better off. But how do I convince the others in my organization that that's really the right thing to do? How do I validate? Maybe I can get them to do a pilot and actually spend in that way. But how do I then validate that your projections are something that I can really have confidence in, and that will play out for my specific brand, because I might be a little bit different from the the brands in the database, even though they're in my same industry.
Yep, that's a great question, Rex, and that is where we've got a couple of options to validate end-of-campaign results. One way is to measure the campaign and do a validation exercise and an analysis after the campaign is complete to say, what did mobile deliver to my overall mix? And this is an okay way to offer validation. This kind of offers a little bit of a backwards looking, here's what happened with mobile, and here's what we expect would happen without mobile. If we remove that impact, here's what we would see. But the secret sauce at Marketing Evolution is the ability to validate results as the campaign runs, essentially to determine how the campaign, and mobile specifically, is working in the marketplace. So if you haven't used mobile advertising in the past, we can run those scenarios like you said, Rex, and set your specific campaign into our what-if scenario, so I can force your spend in for what your budget is for TV and what your budget is for magazine and what your budget is across all the media levers to say, here's what we expect your specific campaign will deliver. But then we'll have the ability to measure in-campaign response, to look at the response dynamics and offer a mid-campaign optimization to ensure that you meet those goals that you set, and offer mid-course validation of how your campaign is performing. So if you haven't used mobile advertising in the past, you may not know the various response dynamics of different ad types and different creative formats and targets and demographics. And with this mid-campaign optimization, you have the ability to look at the response dynamics in the marketplace and use your mid-campaign optimization to ensure that you meet the goals that you set. So how does that work? Marketing Evolution uses the same external factor data that is standard in time series analytics. So we can look at how weather patterns interact with advertising to impact bottom line sales. We can look at other types of economic factors. What is unique to Marketing Evolution really is what's on the left-hand side of the screen here. That is the customer level response data, where we can see response to different media tactics and append behavioral data to determine what the leading indicators are to driving the customer to purchase. So in Forrester's last wave of the Marketing Mix Model Report, they really determined that this combination of customer level data with that external time series data is Marketing Evolution's unique way to look at drivers of business results. So taking those external factors and looking at that customer level response to understand in market what's happening so that we can offer recommendations of how to adjust your media mix to increase your overall campaign performance. So Marketing Evolution is continuously refreshing our ROI brain data warehouse that Rex referred to earlier. We're interviewing over 20,000 customers and prospects per year in interviews that we're conducting every single day. We're appending behavioral data like search data and weather patterns and social media with the emotional data that's collected in our surveys to essentially determine how advertising is changing perceptions and increasing customers' propensity to make a purchase. We know that customers don't wake up with that AT&T Moto X phone that Rex talked about in that case study for AT&T. They don't wake up with that phone in their pocket. They're actually moving through a purchase decision with various touch points to advertising and other factors. And the ability to combine behavioral data with emotional data provides us with that secret sauce that we talk about when we're looking to validate results so that we can determine what's working and what's not working well in market to make adjustments as needed to achieve the highest campaign ROI. So with that, I'm going to jump to talk a little bit about the methodology of how actually we do this. Mobile measurement has provided some challenges for marketers in the past. So looking at mobile within the broader context of the overall media mix and looking at this cross-media view with all the other media included in your campaign has provided a little bit of a measurement challenge for some marketers in the past because of the lack of cookie data available. Marketing Evolution does use two different methods to capture mobile exposure. We typically will, we can use either individually or we can combine them to kind of ensure we get the most robust sample possible. So we have the ability to leverage online panels that have first-party exposure beacons on their mobile device so that we can track their behavior and their ad exposures. We can also supplement that sample in working with mobile publishers and mobile ad networks. Some of you who we're working with may be on the line today. And we can target impressions directly at panelists that we know have a crossover of visitors on those ad network sites and on survey panelists that we have access to. So we can track their behavior and their exposure to media and determine their shift in attitudinal brand perceptions based on their exposure to advertising, and then we can also link that up to sales as we look at what actually drove them to ring the cash register. So you can see listed on the bottom of this slide the various ad formats we can measure with this methodology. It includes rich media, audio, location-based ads. So many of you, we may already be employing this methodology. Those who haven't explored mobile in the past, we definitely have the ability to do so within this cross-media perspective. We then combine that measurement data, so the mobile response data, the response to the advertisement, and that exposure that we're capturing in the methodology I just outlined, with that exposure data to all the other media in the campaign that we're capturing. So we're capturing the response to TV and magazine and digital and all the media in your mix. Combine that with the reach frequency, dynamics of those media, and the cost. Like we talked about earlier when I ran those what-if scenarios, we'll run that campaign-specific data through an optimization to say mid-course, here's what's working, here's what's not working, and here are some adjustments we can make to actually take maybe a campaign that's performing pretty well and exceed your goals and outperform your expectations and provide that mid-course validation that, yep, what we're doing is working, and we've actually learned something in market that we can make adjustments and improve our end-of-campaign result. So how can we work with you to include mobile in your media mix? Some of you may be doing this already, but for those of you that we aren't, Marketing Evolution can measure mobile in campaign in the exact same way we're measuring performance of other media in the ROI Brain platform. So you can see in this example, about $13 million of a $60 million campaign is spent, and we're able to look at how mobile is performing against the forecast that we set using our historical database norms that we set in our what-if scenario planning. So what did we expect mobile will deliver, and how is it performing against that forecast? Once we have that in-campaign information, what we've captured in measurement for the first $13 million worth of ad spend for mobile, we have the ability to then increase the impact that that campaign is achieving. So it's more than just validation. It's the ability to take that information, do some validation exercises to understand where we are based on where we projected we would be, and then we actually have the ability to run an optimization to say, here's what we've learned, and here are the adjustments we would make to get an optimization based on that in-campaign performance, based on the dynamics of response across the different demographics and ad formats and creative executions that we talked about earlier. So in this situation, we see at that mid-campaign point, adjusting mobile from a $4.8 million spend to a $7.7 million spend because it was exceeding the benchmark that we set. And it's more than just validation, but it's an opportunity to increase the overall campaign ROI to go from what we where we projected you would get to an optimized level. So again, this is standard in our ROI Brain platform. We do this across all media, and mobile fits into the mix in this way. And this is also the type of work we are doing in our partnership with the Mobile Marketing Association in the SMOC study. So this is a way to look at your mid-campaign performance, make those adjustments, and then we will go back at the end and we'll do that validation and say, okay, where did we end up versus where we expected to end up? But it's really that ability to make those adjustments based on what we learned that will get you the highest possible campaign ROI. So with that, Rex, I think I will hand it back to you and we can open it up for any questions we have.
Yeah, I think one of the areas that I wanted to just expand on from the last slide that you had up, if you bring that back up for a second, is, you know, in some of this case where we've talked about mobile, building off of the AT&T case example of mobile in the context of advertising, and certainly IBP, the impact-based planning, is looking at mobile from the angle of in your advertising mix. But one of the things I'm really excited about, especially with the mission control dashboard, is the ability to think about the other ways in which mobile can create value and how that return on investment works. And so some of the same type of work that we might be doing to look at call center conversion and effectiveness and the overall big picture investment parts. I think that it's worth noting that that there are broader ways in which mobile may create value, and we can work with you as our clients to say, what's your theory about what it should be doing for your business, and what is how does it create a return on investment and create a more sophisticated view of mobile's contribution on in other ways. I think we're going to see. I think we're going to increasingly see marketers owning the investment of the mobile app, which might be a customer service part, and that customer service part, you might say something like, well, if I'm flying to Chicago later on this week, for example, so I'll use my mobile app from my my airline to get information, and what that should do, if you're thinking sitting on the side of the table of the marketers, what that should do is it should increase my net promoter score, should increase my satisfaction, it should increase my retention or share of wallet that I give to those people that are providing better service through mobile, which is one of the ways in which it makes my life as a customer a little bit easier. So we can play through some of those type of things as well if you're thinking about mobile beyond the advertising dynamics. I think that fits in as well. So with that, I think Elizabeth is going to go through some of the questions that have come up, and we will try to address those. You can enter in your questions in the question panel on the right side, and I see one of the first questions, which we may have answered, but maybe we'll come back here, which is how do you collect the data to measure the effects in different media channels? And just maybe doing a quick recap on that question, and then we'll see if there's some additional questions coming in. Jane, do you want to do a quick recap of that question?
Yep, absolutely. So for mobile specifically, like I mentioned, we actually can survey individuals that have been exposed to advertising based on either a first-party exposure beacon that is on the survey panelist's mobile device, so we can track their exposure and interview those individuals about different brand perceptions and look at the response across individuals who have varying levels of exposure. So maybe one individual only had exposure to one ad with increased frequency. How do their perceptions change, and how do they kind of move through the purchase process, kind of leading them down towards sales? We also have the ability to work with ad network partners to target impressions at individuals that we can match based on a panel ID number. So we know the mobile device ID of individuals. We can target the impressions and working with ad networks so that we can ensure we get robust enough sample that we can actually look at the granular mobile ad types. So we know that a lot of marketers are starting to experiment, a little bit of budget with audio, a little bit of budget with some location-based ads, and we'll actually work with ad network partners to target impressions at individuals that with exposure on those specific ad types so that we can ensure we've got the data that we need to look at that response in the cross-media way.
Yeah, and I think I'll just I'll add a little bit to that. I will just grab the presenting part to show something from my screen. This is you know, to cover off some of the cross-media elements of it. Let me make this a little bit bigger here. You know, for each of the media that we're going through, we want to try to have as good of probability of exposure measurement as possible. So a data set that ultimately, as Jane mentioned, we will interview 20,000 consumers per brand per year. You know, that we'll look at television and be able to take the data from Nielsen data about, well, how are the TV impressions delivered by different DMAs, and how are they delivered to males versus females, or young versus old, or you know, this region versus that region. And we can take all that composition data and physical profile data combined with asking people what they watch, because you know, Nielsen's monitoring data says that the typical person, you know, which accounts for over 90% of us, watch less than 20 channels. So asking people what they watched recently, what programs, networks, that combination of behavioral data, the Nielsen ratings by the zip code that someone lives in, the composition, the ratings by the behavioral data on the composition, combined with being able to refine it a little bit better, gives us actually much, much better data than what you get in a marketing mix model for, you know, what kind of TV exposure did someone have, and how did that relate to the sales. And then we'll do that with magazine, and we do that with radio, we do that with, you know, digital, similar to mobile. We can read the ad delivery into their devices and say, this is the pattern of all the different media that somebody was exposed to. How does that then relate to changes in their purchase habits or brand awareness or brand perception? And so this type of data set is what gives us that full cross-media view that ultimately led to the different curves that Jane showed earlier, where we're putting together the impact by frequency and the cost data and the duplication data to figure out what that optimal mix is. So see, we have, see if there's other questions here. Another question here is, for the first part of the seminar, in the AT&T example, how do we measure the impact? What's the variable we are talking about when we say impact? Is it revenue, is it usage, or is it something else? So great question. So to answer that more directly, we ask each marketer before we go through the measurement, what is it that you're trying to achieve? And Jay made the comment that you don't wake up in the morning and discover, oh my God, I have a AT&T Motorola phone in here. How did I get that? You know, there is a deliberate purchase process that most people go through for most products. There's, you know, most purchases aren't impulse. They have a degree of consideration. So we asked the marketer, how are you looking to achieve your objectives and your goals? In AT&T's case, they said our objective is to build awareness for this new phone. And our belief is if we increase awareness, then people will, a portion of those people will then go on to look more closely at it, consider it, and, you know, ultimately some of those people will convert to purchase. But our main objective is to build awareness. So we use this same data set, and we will use a brand-based survey to measure awareness before the campaign launches, as the campaign's launching, and then we can pull apart people who have been exposed to different levels of TV and different levels of mobile and magazine and radio, and see is there a difference in awareness levels when you have higher levels of exposure to different media, different combinations. And then, of course, we divide by the cost to then figure out the ROI. So in AT&T's specific case, it was awareness. In other marketers that we're measuring, the objective is sales. So we're linking into you know, actual behavioral purchases and saying, how did these media patterns influence changes in sales behavior? So we use the word impact to mean the impact that the marketer has defined as their primary objective for that particular campaign. Let's see if there's another question. So I think we have time for one or two more questions. So by all means, please raise your hand and add it in. I see another question in here. Well, there's actually two more questions here. I'll ask the first one, then there's another one related to AT&T. In terms of, well, I'll come back to the AT&T one just to keep the conversation in the same area. How do we sample the population when we do the AT&T example? So how do we ensure that the sample is randomly selected? And considering mobile channel users are already using the mobile devices, it is reasonable to anticipate that they will be more likely to purchase a new mobile device. That is to say, is it possibly a biased sample? Can you talk about constructing the right sample for different marketers and speak a bit to the sampling part, and we'll dive more into AT&T? Jane, do you want to dive into that one?
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely. So we look to ensure our sample is kind of nationally representative, so we have the ability to kind of control our sampling in a way that we ensure we have different demographics essentially weighted to census, and ensuring that we have the base target representing whoever the marketer set as their kind of media targets, or capturing specifically the individuals that are within the scope that matters most to the marketer. Regarding the kind of broader panels that we use to survey, we actually have the ability to use a pretty broad panel, and then within that panel we have exposure data that we're tracking against those individual people. So there may not be the entire sample that's exposed to these mobile ads, but to your point, any individual who's exposed to a mobile ad will have a mobile device. So we've got a nationally representative sample, and then within that a subset of individuals who have been exposed to that mobile advertising.
Yeah, so an interesting dynamic, and I'll take the other dynamic, which is the bias part, which is that if you're advertising, selling a mobile device to people who already have a mobile device, that should be, that should be a pretty good place of targeting. And in fact, that from, if you're a purist academic research just saying where does mobile fit in, that that might not be thought of as a objective sample, but we aren't just sampling people who have mobile devices. We're, as Jane said, we're sampling the entire nationally representative population, and so those people without mobile, we're measuring the effectiveness of magazine and television and radio. And we know, obviously, if they're not using mobile device, then the effectiveness of mobile is zero, and that fits into the calculation. So there's no inherent bias in the sampling part. What we want to do, though, is for the mobile part, we want to see, is that a good way of targeting and reaching the people that matter most to you? And for some products like AT&T, it should be a no-brainer. I mean, these are people, and that's why they've been such a huge advocate of the research and digging deeper into it, is it just makes sense that if they are a mobility company, that mobile is an important part of their advertising and marketing mix. The next couple studies we're doing, with Walmart and Coca-Cola and some other ones that are in various forms of discussion, those are different kinds of dynamics, and so it'll be very interesting as we build out this body of different case studies to see where you get a higher percentage mix recommendation for mobile and where you might see a lower one. And you saw some of that already in the scenarios that Jane was sharing. Health and beauty, we, from the data we've seen so far, might be a little bit less than, say, telecommunications. So we got one last question for you, Jane, which is, I'm a marketer and we haven't done a lot in mobile. How do I get started? What's my first couple steps?
Absolutely. So I think the first step is to look at the dynamics of mobile within your campaign budget, of how mobile could fit in. So those what-if scenarios. So we could run some unconstrained scenarios using our impact-based budget-based optimization software to say, how much should mobile be in your total overall mix, just totally unconstrained? And we can run those scenarios and include mobile with the other media that you typically use to say, okay, in a totally optimal world, what % of your budget should go to mobile? And then we can work through the what-if scenarios and scenario planning to run different types of scenarios with varying levels of mobile budget to see what will mobile contribute to my overall mix if I spend 2% of my budget, 5% of my budget, and where will that budget come from, and look at the dynamics of the cross-media duplication and overlap essentially that our software will consider to say, let's peel a little bit of money back from this media and add it in there. Or maybe this is a test where we want to add $200,000 of budget and test that with mobile. So we'll go through these what-if scenarios to really see the dynamics that we would expect mobile to play in your media mix using our robust database of marketers that have used mobile in the past, and we've learned from that by industry and by objective. So we'll get to a place where we're comfortable with a projection of this is the percentage that you want to spend and this is what we want to test for mobile, and we're going to actually go ahead and measure that in the context of the other media in your campaign. So capture exposure to all the different media in your campaign and see how mobile's performing so that a few weeks into the campaign we can say, all right, here's what mobile's done so far. Based on that validation, we expected it would deliver this. Here's what we see it actually delivering. We can make decisions together of what are the trade-offs in increasing the spend or adjusting the allocation across these different media based on that initial validation. So making a decision with a level of mobile spend that the marketer is comfortable with, and then using that in-campaign data within a couple of weeks of the campaign to say, okay, we've done it. This is the first time we're using mobile. We're able to see what it's actually delivered so far and make a decision of how we want to spend our budget for the remaining portion of the campaign. Are there different ad formats that are working better than others? Should we move from one creative type to another creative type, or target certain creative on certain placements that are reaching different targets that respond in different ways and find those most responsive targets? So we'll actually have the ability to make those adjustments and start looking at how mobile's performing within that first couple of weeks, and then at the end of the campaign we'd be able to look at the overall increase in marketing ROI that was achieved by including mobile in the mix, and do kind of an end-of-campaign validation exercise as well, so that you can start thinking about that next campaign and where mobile will fit in, and actually pull that measurement data that we were able to use in that first campaign and know a little bit more about how mobile performs and include that in the planning for the next campaign.
Well, that sounds like a great continuous learning cycle. It sounds like you can get somebody up from just very little mobile experience to a lot of knowledge within just a few months. So thank you, Jane, for that description. And thank you all for, first of all, to our clients for being on the line and spending an hour with us to hear about other ways we might be able to help you understand how to optimize your media mix and get more from your marketing budget. And thank you to our other guests who have joined us for today's webinar. We will make this available for on-demand in case you want to share with some of your colleagues. In the next few days, you'll see an announcement about that. And if you have any other questions for me or Jane, feel free to email us or contact us directly. Thank you again, and have a great week.